Welcome, Life Sciences, to another exciting life science lesson. Today, we're almost completing our journey with microorganisms. The last couple of lessons, we're looking at this whole concept of what a microorganism is. It's something that's really, really small, but we also looked at the huge impact that it had, on our society. So let's just quickly recap. What did we look at? We started off looking at viruses, then we looked at bacteria, then we looked at protists, and the last lesson would have been on fungi. And one of the things that we concentrated on in those lessons was we concentrated on the structure, the characteristic, and all of those we looked at a pathogen, right? And what is that? It's disease-producing bacteria or disease-producing, protists. And we concentrated a lot on the diseases that these microorganisms caused. Today, we're going to look at it in a totally different light. Today, we're going to concentrate on why are microorganisms so important in our environment. Guys, as some of the things that we've touched on, we're going to briefly touch on again, because the concept of, today we're looking at functions of microorganisms, and they play such an important role, in our environment. Our question for today, says it. It's that we've concentrated in the last while on these diseases, what makes us sick, etc. And today we're going to take a totally opposite stand, and we're going to say, yes, I know that it causes diseases, but guys, the most important thing is we can't live without microorganisms. They are essential to our environment. Okay, if we have a look at the mind map, it's quite a busy one today. Usually I keep things quite simple, but that also tells you how important microorganisms are. The mind map tells us where we're going, what do we need to concentrate on. As I said to you, a lot of the concepts we might have dealt with, but we're taking all of those importances and we're packing them in one important concept. A lot of the terminology, again, words that you might not recognize, you might not understand. Some of them we have done in previous lessons, so I'm hoping that you remember, that you recall, and you can think, oh, I remember that one. All right, or maybe this time, oh, I forgot about that, and let's go back, check on our notes, check on our textbooks, right? Underline it, highlight it. I need to know these important concepts. As I said to you, life science is a different language. You must be able to speak those terms that we're going to discuss. Okay, so now we're going to start looking at why is it so important, why are microorganisms so essential to our lives. Now, the first term that we're going to look at, is this word decomposers. Now, a decomposer, things die. That's one thing you've got to know, that living things, all living things die. And here, I put a picture of an animal, and here I've put a picture of a plant, and everything dies. Everything, all living things ultimately are going to die. Living things are made up of stuff, They're made up of nutrients. And what decomposers do is they take those nutrients and they return them back to the environment. Guys, you don't drive around or walk around and you see dead things lying all over the show. And that's what decomposers do, Everything that dies, they need to return all those nutrients into the soil. And bacteria and fungi, remember, bacteria and fungi, they are probably two of the most important microorganisms that return these nutrients back to the environment. Now, the next concept you might remember, if you were looking at grade 10 syllabus. Now, the grade 10 syllabus, you might have done it or you might have looked at it earlier on, is this whole concept of nutrient recycling. What do we mean by that? There are certain things, like nitrogen's one of them, carbon dioxide is one of them, oxygen was one of them. Don't know if you can remember, Water is one of them. And all of those things are non-living. And we can't just make them. So what we need to do is we need to recycle. What does recycle mean? It's almost like a continuous circle. We use and we give back. We use and we give back. And that's exactly how microorganisms are going to play a huge, big role. I want you to have a look at this diagram. It might be familiar to you. This is going to pop up once or twice. What is really, really important is this nitrogen, right? So nitrogen is a very important element, but have a look here. What am I looking at over here? This decomposers. Look at this over here. What do decomposers do? They play such an important role in returning nitrogen back into the atmosphere. Now, when it comes to nitrogen, right, nitrogen, guys, is approximately 78% of the Earth's gases. 78%. That's more than oxygen, carbon dioxide, all of that. But plants and animals, we don't have a way in which that we can take in oxygen. So what do? We rely on bacteria, we rely on fungi, but especially bacteria. And bacteria are able, right, to take the nitrogen and to be able, right, to convert it to something that plants can use and animals can use. And over here, remember what I said, it's recycling. So what do? When an animal dies, what does it return to the soil? The nitrogen, right? It's returned. And that nitrogen changes, and so an animal eats it, the animal dies, it's returned to the soil or the atmosphere, the animal eats it, etc. This whole concept of recycling, of using, giving back, using and giving back. We see it here as well when it comes to carbon dioxide. Maybe you looked at that, right, in previous lessons. All living things are going to give off carbon dioxide. And when do we give off carbon dioxide? When things die, right? So dying things, once again, what are we doing? We use oxygen and we give off carbon dioxide. Plants use oxygen, and when things die, what do? They give off carbon dioxide. So this whole concept of using, returning, using, returning. And that's what microorganisms do, all right? They help return these needed nutrients back to where they need to be. Okay, guys, now it comes to oxygen. Oxygen, exactly the same as nitrogen, exactly the same as carbon dioxide. We can't just make it. We have to recycle it, if I can use that. And how do we recycle it? The recycling comes in, have a look at this color. Right? Any kind of organism that's got chlorophyll. Because if it has chlorophyll, what can it produce? It can produce oxygen because it can photosynthesize. Now, if you watch some of the previous lessons, you would have noticed this. What is this? This is phytoplankton. That is tiny little microscopic organisms. They're both protists and they are found right in aquatic mediums. Here, right, this is blue-green algae, right? And some of what are algae able to do, and some bacteria, cyanobacteria have also got green. So we've got bacteria, we've got algae, right? And what can they all do? They can photosynthesize. And what does that mean? They take in the carbon dioxide and they release oxygen, because all living things need oxygen. So it's a regeneration. We can't make it, but we can produce it. Plants can produce it in a concept called photosynthesis. Okay, now we're going to pop up this diagram that I showed you just now, is the nitrogen fixers. Now I'm going to show you the diagram before I come here. It's the same diagram we used just now. So here was my decomposers, returning the nutrients, all right, to the soil. And who benefits from these beautiful nutrients? The plants. But now this concept of nitrogen fixing, as I said to you, all right, this gas, so important, yet we cannot use it at all. So what do we have? We have bacteria that live in the soil. Some just living in the soil, some on the roots of plants, right? And what do they do is they are able to take nitrogen, right, from the air, and the bacteria converts it to something called nitrates. And what can the plants do? They can absorb those nitrates in the water, in their roots. And those nitrates go up the plant, and the plant can then convert it to nitrogen. All right. So any kind of plant that we call a protein. I don't know if you can remember biochemistry, but if there's nitrogen present, it's a protein. And that's how animals, right, need to eat the protein, the plants that have been able to convert that nitrogen. Right, now guys, also a concept that we've looked at before. What is this rhizobium? Now this is a bit of a picture over here. Now what it is this is the bacteria, right? This is the bacteria that we find. It's a mutualistic relationship. We're going to see a picture just now. But what this bacteria does, here's bacteria that we just said. Okay guys, if we take a closer look, all right, to what these bacteria are. So here you go to see a picture. Here's the roots. So those little round spots, you see I've labeled them rhizobium. That's basically what the bacteria are, right? They're these little conglomerations on the root. And what they do is, they're not like fungi. As I said, they're bacteria. And what they're able to do is here in the soil, as I said to you, they convert the nitrogen to nitrates. And as soon as the nitrates go in, can you see it right by the roots? The roots can take them up. And where do we ultimately need to go? To the leaves, right? And why do we need nitrogen in the leaves? Because nitrogen is a really important, right, element for the making of chlorophyll. So plants need to be able to use that nitrogen to make the chlorophyll as well. Okay, now one of the concepts that we can use, right, is biological control. I don't know if you've ever heard of this concept before, but very often when we looked at, let's go to the malaria one. When we looked at malaria, we said the one way of getting rid of that mosquito was to spray with DDT. Okay, now when we spray, we use chemicals, and chemicals can have a very harmful effect in the environment. So one of the ways that we can get rid of harmful things without harming the rest of the environment is called this concept called biological control. Right, so what it is over here, I want you to have a look. Do you see those round brown things on the branch? You see those big round brown things, okay? That is actually a fungus. Now, it looks really gross and it's killing the plant. And we say, yes, right, yay, why are we excited for killing the plant? Because this tree over here is an alien, not as in an alien from another planet, right? What do we mean by an alien plant? It's a plant that lives in South Africa. It's one of an acacia trees, but it's not indigenous from here, right? And it actually causes a lot of harm. It takes in a lot of water, and our country is not a country that's full of water, right? We're actually a dry country. So this plant actually kills the things around it, and it's not good for our environment. So what we want to do is, we don't always want to chop it down because there could be a lot of things in the trees. So what we do is you infect it with a fungus, and that fungus feeds off of that tree, because that's what fungus does, because it doesn't have its own chlorophyll, and it feeds off the tree and it ultimately kills it. So it's fine, all right? We don't want that tree anymore, and we give the fungus an opportunity, right, to feed. That is biological control. No chemicals used at all. Okay, now we're going to look at just a few symbiotic relationships. And if we looked at symbiosis, you know it's when animals or organisms or plants have a relationship, and we're going to pay a particular one to mutualism, where both of the organisms benefit. Okay, guys, here in our tummies, not so much our stomachs, in our colons, in our large intestines, we have got lots and lots and lots of bacteria, right, growing in our colons, and that's really cool, all right? Because what happens is that they actually make some vitamins for us. So they make vitamin K especially, so that's how they're going to benefit. But what do they do for us? What's in my colon? Food, right? And what do the bacteria need? they would like food. So I give it bacteria, all right? I give the bacteria food, yay for bacteria. And what does it do for me? It gives me a very helpful vitamin that I need to help with blood clotting. Both parties benefit. This one we looked at, so I'm not going to spend too much time. All right, guys, here's the bacteria on the roots of plants. All right, what does it give the plant? It gives the plant nitrates, nitrogen, nutrients. And what does it the plant give it in return? Food. Guys, plants are food. Right? That's the relationship that they're going to have. Right? Bacteria helps with the nitrogen, and plants say to the bacteria, here guys, have some glucose. Because all cells need to cellular respire, and we need glucose and oxygen for that. Here's a nice concept as well. These are fungi. Again, it's the roots. Have a look at the white over here. So there's lots and lots and lots of white, and you guys think, oh, that's the roots. It's actually not the roots. It's the roots come like this, and all these other ones I'm going to do, just show you a different color. Right, those are all fungal threads. Right, and they increase the absorptive area. So instead of having just a few roots, you have all these fungal threads. And what can fungus do? It can absorb water. So what does it do for the plants? Large amounts of, water and nutrients. And what are plants? Plants are food, because the fungus can't make its own food. Right, so they help each other. Right, mutualism, both benefit. Okay, guys, that's enough for now. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.